بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه أما بعد. Continuing with Salah al-Ummah fi ulu al-Himma, the correctness of the Ummah is in building the high spirit and going chapter by chapter. And then when it comes to the ittiba' and building the high spirit in the ittiba' is to know how to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and know what are the rightful way to follow the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when you say the rightful way of the following of the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because there's many elements that comes along the path for someone to think that they should do or they should inspire from or they should follow, and that's where things start to be shaky and person will be without knowing, diverting himself from or herself from the path or from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and gradually going astray from the path. He says, and as we have said, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah in this chapter, to read some of his saying and his effort in standing for the truth, standing of the types of the innovation. And people sometimes when it comes to the word of the bid'ah, they take it very lightly, or in the opposite way, they take it, very harshly into a way that everything becomes a bid'ah. When people, subhanallah, they think, that the slightest thing, even to greet someone on certain days, with the special greeting, they call it a bid'ah, meaning that this person is on the verge of hellfire, and that's really ignorance. However, the true bid'ah that is really threatening the deen is the bid'ah in the fundamental of the belief, But how to cleanse one's path from all these things to be sure that someone is on the right path. يقول قد أوجب الله طاعة الرسول على جميع الناس في قريب من 40 موضعا في القرآن. Let's go step by step. The first is we have the obedience of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ordained the obedience of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in more than 40 places in the Quran. وَطَاعَتُهُ طَاعَةَ اللَّهِ. And the obedience of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is indeed the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is fundamental, this is a principle. Because many people, they will think of a hadith always, if they do not like the content of the hadith, they will be even thrown saying this is hadith da'if, this is hadith this. So they will be like trying to justify, trying to arguing, when subhanAllah the first thing to start with is the ta'ah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If that hadith, has been proven sound, then the obedience of the content or to fulfill that content of hadith is an obligation. وقال التقليد المحرم بالنص والإجماع أن يعارض قول الله ورسوله بما يخالف ذلك. What is emulating and imitating others, what is haram is whatever someone is emulating or following conflict with a proven text in the Quran or in the Sunnah, or a text has the approval of the consensus of the scholar. إن الله سبحانه وتعالى لما ذكر حال من يقول على الله بلا علم بل تقليد السلف ذكر حال من يكتم ما أنزل الله من البينات والهدى من بعد ما بينه للناس في الكتاب. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah, He said how people they follow their forefathers without knowledge. قال أولو كان آباؤهم لا يعقلون شيئا ولا يهتدون. What if their father they did not comprehend any of this element of the guidance? Just because they were your forefather, it means that they are on the right path and following on the path of your forefather, that the secure path. No, that is ignorance. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this, He also mentioned how the people who has been given the knowledge, they've been, covering or hiding the bayinat, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clarified in His book from the path of the guidance after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has conveyed to the people. قال إن الذين يكتمون ما أنزل الله من الكتاب ويشترون به ثمنا قليلا. So this is one of the biggest element of the deviation. If someone, for example, he will be given a fatwa, but the fatwa to justify an action of a person that is really deviated from the path. A fatwa to justify for the rulers what they're doing from ill-doing, to justify for a business person what they're doing from their cheating, to justify, someone, to appease their heart, regardless if this person on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's from اشتراء آيات الله بثمن قليل. So يشترون به ثمنا قليلا, which is they using the book, they using the knowledge for their own interests, for worldly gains. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Knowing that what is the punishment, what are the consequences of that, such a thing, or the punishment, قال أولئك ما يأكلون في بطونهم إلا نار. Those they only devour or eat in the hereafter except fire. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. And Allah will not talk to them in the day of judgment, and He will not elevate them or purify them, and they will have a grievous torment. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Knowing such a thing, knowing that the consequences of such, taking lightly the fatwa, not really pondering on the book to convey the right message, that its consequence, such torment, then how devastating, how, subhanAllah, mischief someone is spreading when they do such a thing. Because deviating people, leading people astray is one, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, of the biggest, major sin. فقال هذا حال من كتم علم الرسول وذلك حال من عدل عنها إلى خلافها والعاجل عنها إلى خلافها يدخل فيه من قلد أحدا من الأولين والآخرين فيما يعلم أنه خلاف قول رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So this is applied for those who are imitating from the earlier generation, knowing that he is conflicting with the message of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Especially when it introduced in among the Muslim the philosophy, and how it has been translated and been embraced as a methodology to understand the deen, and therefore being a methodology to understand the deen, it becomes base of having a basis of a critical view of a deen from a perspective that conflicts with the deen itself. For this reason they came to many aberration in the way of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His attributes, even in the beginning of the creation, in how to apply what the meaning of the good and the evil. Is it created by Allah or it is created by the human? So a lot of chaos happened because of introducing things out of the body of Islam to understand the way of Islam. This is what Shaykh al-Islami rahimahullah ta'ala, he stood against, and he wrote in a very eloquent, knowledgeable way. Because when we talk here, it's not someone who criticizing without knowing. I mean, when he criticized the Greek logic, he had studied the Greek logic. He was knowledgeable of the Greek logic more than let's say the professor of the Greek logic. And he had criticism, the critic of Greek logic, the book that they study till now at the university, that he, and did, the whole structure of the Greek logic by, criticizing one of the very basic elements upon which the whole logic standing. قال سواء كان صاحبا أو تابعا أو أحد الفقهاء أو غيرهم. Now, regardless of the person that one is following, but what he's following is conflicting and contradicting with the saying of the Prophet ﷺ. So either, be it, a faqih, companion of the Prophet ﷺ, أحد التابعين, all of them, their words comes after listening to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. ومن ادعى إجماعا يخالف نص الرسول من غير نص يكون موافقا لما يدعي. And whoever said, oh, this is the consensus of the Ummah. So how can you say the consensus of the Ummah when it conflicts with the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So this is actually an innovation, and he does not have any evidence from that, for that. أن قال رحمه الله: وكثير من الفقهاء المتأخرين وأكثرهم يقولون إنهم عاجزون عن تلقي جميع الأحكام الشرعية من جهة الرسول، فيجعلون نصوص أئمتهم بمنزلة نص الرسول. So this is a claim, this is what they argue. Many of the fuqaha, they said we are not able to gather all the laws of the Sharia or to get it from the source of the, and here we're talking about the source, from the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ. Therefore what they do, they take the text of their scholar, of their imams that they follow, and they put it at the level of the text of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is where deviation is happening. I mean, to adhere to an opinion of a previous scholar, as long as, you know, it is in compliance and it goes with the high objective of the Sharia, it's fine. But to make it an obligation on the Ummah, that is different, you know, topic. Why? Because, for example, if you make the opinion of Abi Hanifa an obligation of all the Muslims, and then you reject any other opinion, so this is like getting into path of extremism. And this is, you are leading people astray and forcing them, you making the deen to be like, harsh, to make the deen rigid. Is like you are stripping the deen from its characteristic of, balance, from its characteristic of leniency, and that's, what it leads people astray. And it happened in the years of the stagnation, maybe 3, 4, like more than 2 centuries, from the 17th or 17th century to down to the 19th century or less. قال ويقلدونهم, and then they follow them blindly. ولا ريب أن كثيرا من الناس يحتاج إلى تقليد العلماء في الأمور العارضة التي لا يستقل هو بمعرفتها. There is no doubt that most of the people, they need to emulate scholars. Why? Because, to practice their deen. But to come to a person knowledgeable and student of knowledge, to take the opinion of the previous scholar as at the level to be venerated and, dealt with as the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that's an issue. Why? Because you make those people like al-ma'sumin. Ma'sum, it means like is sinless. وَلَا يَتَلَقَّى سُلُوكُ إِلَّا عَنْهُ, and also they only follow the conduct. It becomes like this sheikh, he's the path to the purification. He's the path to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And slowly they are fardening themselves from the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet becomes like, the greatest example of the purification. It becomes the light that everybody is aspired to attain and inspire from, but they do not follow his guidance. And this is one of the big problems, like some of the extreme Sufi, they doing, this path. قال مع أن تلقي السلوك عن الرسول أسهل من تلقي الفروع المتنازع فيها. I mean, to understand and to emulate the Prophet ﷺ in his behavior and conduct is much easier and much simple than to try to emulate the shuyukh and all their differences and there's conflict that they have between them and differences in the opinion. فإن السلوك هو الطريق التي أمر الله بها ورسوله من الاعتقادات والعبادات والأخلاق. When you talk about the suluk, what are the suluk? The way someone behaves, the way someone conducts, the way someone worships, the way someone deals with the people. So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Messenger has ordained and had clarified, either in the belief or in the worship or in the akhlaq. And this is all is well determined, well clarified in the book of Allah and the Sunnah. And people, subhanAllah, they feel that it's not enough in the book and the Sunnah to go find, dig into books how to get purified, how to feel that sweetness of the Iman, how to do some practice, how many tasbih they have to do in the day. All of that, subhanAllah, divert people from the right path when everything is in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the Sunnah of his Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? Because what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala convey in his book and what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught is at the level of the nurture of the food, if you can say, that the believer cannot, be, subhanallah, independent from, or cannot the believer neglect, because that's really the main substance that give to the life to their heart. ولهذا جميع الصحابة يعلمون السلوك بدلالة الكتاب والسنة والتبليغ عن الرسول. The evidence that all the companions, they know how to behave, how to conduct, how to worship, from the book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and they do not need in that the scholar among the companions Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim. Then he said, and he continued, قال ولكن كثيرا من أهل العبادة والزهادة أعرض عن طلب العلم النبوي الذي يعرف به طريق الله ورسوله. Many of the zuhad, many of the seeker of the path, many of those traveling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they turn away from the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? Because they believe that the knowledge in another path. So they had then to emulate and follow exactly a shaykh, وفي السلوك مسائل تنازع فيها الشيوخ لكن يوجد في الكتاب والسنة من النصوص الدالة على الصواب. And you find the sheikhs, for example, here you find the Qadariyya, the Naqshbandiyya. There's many of the path, and when you ask these people, why are you following this path? They say that's the path of the ihsan. The sheikh has, kind of Allah guided him to a path that helped to lead the ihsan. Therefore, we emulate his path to get us to the ihsan. Then here, should you not emulate the Prophet ﷺ, the one who had, achieved the highest position of the ihsan ever among the humankind, and it is clear in the book of the Sunnah. قال من النصوص الدالة على الصواب في ذلك ما يفهمه غالب السالكين. What it is really simple for everyone to understand it. فمسائل السلوك من جنس مسائل العقائد كلها منصوصة في الكتاب والسنة. Therefore, we can say that the aspect of the conduct as same as the aspect related to the aqidah, all of it is clarified in the Sunnah. قال فلما دخلوا في البدع وقع الاختلاف وهكذا طريق العبادة عامة ما يقع فيه من الاختلاف إنما هو بسبب الإعراض عن الطريق المشروع. So if you dig and you see what is the true reason of the deviation is that they turn away from the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's really, subhanAllah, sometimes I will say intriguing, and you have just 1 minute inshallah to finish. People, they like the thinking the strange thing. And that, subhanAllah, the shaitan make them, make this thing fair seeming to them, make them look good, What have whirling to do with the ibadah? I mean, the whirling or the dancing or the music that they play to bring them some senses, spirituality. So if you are using incentive to give you spirituality and you thinking that to get you close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a strange, awkward, weird thing, but you want to make it justified as a part of the deen. Why? Simply because they turn away from the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and many of these aspects are so hidden, but someone to secure their path, they should, with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, persevere on the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it really help you to get to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to get the sweetness of Iman, and to get high level of taqwa. Unlike what other people, or other people, they think to be waliullah, to have to be devoted in a special way and, secluded and making the retreats and all of that, that's not the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'll stop here, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan wa barakallahu feekum. If you have any question, you are welcome.